In August 1990, the body of long-term Lucchese soldier Bruno Facciolo was found in the trunk of his 1985 Mercury sedan. The mobster's maggot-infested corpse had a dead bird stuffed in his mouth. What was the story behind this murder, and what happened to the hit squad who whacked him? Let's check it out. Welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the murder of long-time Lucchese soldier Bruno Facciolo, a hit ordered by Lucchese powerhouse Anthony Casso. Bruno Facciolo was a soldier in the Lucchese crime family. He had come up in the fearsome East New York crew of family heavyweight Paul Vario. The exact date of his induction into the crime family is unknown, but at the time of his death in 1990, mobster turned informer Al Diaco stated that Facciolo had been a made man for over 20 years. Bruno Facciolo had become one of Paul Vario's favourite hitmen, and over the years he had accumulated ownership of a demolition yard, a jewellery store, a riding stable, a restaurant, amongst many other businesses, as well as operating out of a club at the junction of Avenue D and Foster Avenue. Fellow Vario crew member Al Diaco remembers that Bruno Facciolo was present the night that Tommy DeSimone was murdered. DeSimone was famously killed on the night that he thought he was going to become a made man, on January the 14th, 1979. The last known place that Tommy DeSimone was seen alive was in fact a pizzeria owned by Bruno Facciolo. Little Al Diaco remembers seeing Tommy DeSimone sat at a table with Bruno Facciolo and P.T. Vario. Diaco told mob expert Jerry Capisi, "I remember Bruno was standing up, and both him and P.T. were wearing nice sports coats, like they were going somewhere. It appears that it was Bruno Facciolo and P.T. Vario who accompanied Tommy DeSimone to the location where he was to be murdered." Diaco recalls, "They brought him to the place he was supposed to be made. They pushed him in and whacked him." Who actually pulled the trigger on Tommy DeSimone is a much discussed mafia mystery, with potential shooters being Gambino members Tommy Agro and John Gotti. But that is a story to be debated another time. Paul Vario died in prison in 1988, and little Al Diaco was promoted by Vic Amuso to take over the East New York crew, which included Bruno Facciolo. And by 1990, Lucchese soldier Bruno Facciolo had built himself a dangerous but loyal following of stick-up men and killers, including Ray Argentina, Larry Taylor, and his brother-in-law Al Flounderhead Visconti. Facciolo and those who surrounded him were considered a force to be reckoned with. That same year, Facciolo's captain Al Diaco found himself in the position of acting boss, since Vic Amuso and family underboss Anthony Casso had gone on the lam due to the upcoming Windows case indictments. After assuming their positions at the top of the Lucchese crime family a few years previous, Amuso and Casso were always very keen to take out any threat to their leadership, whether it was real or simply perceived, such as the murder of Lucchese mobster Anthony DiLappi, who had been hiding out in California. And so, in 1990, when Amuso and Casso were on the run, they were allegedly fearful of not only threats to their power, but also any informers from inside the family ranks. And with their paranoia growing, and armed with information from a pair of corrupt cops in Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa, they proceeded to kill further members of their own crime family, such as the June 1990 murder of respected Captain Mike Salerno. Casso had labelled Mike Salerno a rat and had ordered Al Diaco to arrange the murder. Little Al says that he doesn't believe that Salerno was a rat, but followed the orders regardless. And so, 2 months later, Anthony Gaspipe Casso gave Little Al Diaco another name of a supposed rat to be killed: longtime soldier Bruno Facciolo. According to Al Diaco, information by Casso's mafia cops had indicated that Facciolo was an informer. Again, Diaco had some doubts regarding this, as did Lucchese soldier Louis Bagels de Done. One of the men, along with Frank Lastorino, that Casso had instructed Diaco to use for the hit, similarly to when Mike Salerno was killed. Al Diaco told mob expert Jerry Capisi that he felt that Casso was threatened by Facciolo, who, despite only being a soldier, was capable of pulling together a cadre of loyal and deadly shooters to challenge the absentee bosses. Regardless of Louis Bagel's and Al Diaco's own opinions, orders were orders. On August 24, 1990, Bruno Facciolo picked up his old friend Louis Didone, under the pretense that Didone needed Bruno to formally introduce him to another wise guy who he wanted to deal with. They arrived at a garage on McDonald Avenue in Brooklyn. As they approached the door, Facciolo's own hitman instincts kicked in and grew suspicious. He started hanging back behind Didone. The garage door opened, and inside, Facciolo saw Frank Lastorino and Richard the Toupee Pagliarulo waiting to grab him. Bruno tried to run for it, but he was weakened from having had cancer surgery that year. They dragged him into the garage. Facciolo pleaded, "Louis, let me see my daughter again. Let me go home one time." Lastorino stabbed Facciolo in the chest, who begged to be shot. Pagliarulo obliged, firing 6 into his head and chest. As per Casso's instructions, Didone wedged a dead canary in Facciolo's mouth before the body was rammed into the trunk of a car. A message to others that those who sing to authorities will be dealt with. Despite the claims of Casso and the suspicions of his mafia cops, it isn't believed that Bruno Facciolo was actually an informer for the feds. So let's take a quick look at the criminal careers of the Bruno Facciolo hit squad after this murder. Big Frank Lastorino would famously go on to murder Gambino acting captain and former John Gotti bodyguard Bobby Boriello in 1991. Boriello was gunned down by Big Frank as he stepped from his car in front of his house on April 13, 1991. Following his involvement in the Boriello murder, Vic Amuso and Anthony Gaspipe Casso promoted Lastorino to the position of consigliere. After the incarceration of Amuso and Casso, Lastorino allegedly made a play to take over the family himself and hatched a plot to whack powerful Lucchese family member and new underboss Stephen Wonderboy Crea. Before this plan could come to fruition, Lastorino was indicted on racketeering and murder conspiracy charges, eventually serving 14 years inside from 1994. He was released on December 23, 2008. Richard the Toupee Pagliarulo, who had fired the final fatal shots into Facciolo, was promoted to captain of Fat Pete Chiodo's crew after Fat Pete had turned informer. However, a short time later, and in part due to Fat Pete's testimony, Pagliarulo was sentenced to life in prison for racketeering and murder. On the 15th of January 1999, while serving his sentence in Lewisburg Penitentiary, Richard the Toupee Pagliarulo had a heart attack and died. He was 50 years of age. Louis Bagel's Didone was sentenced to 5 years inside in 1992, along with Ray Argentina and several others, for their part in the 1988 armoured truck robbery. $1.2 million in cash was stolen and never recovered. After his release from prison in around 1996, Didone was allegedly promoted to consigliere. And then in the year 2000, when Stephen Crea was sentenced to 5 years for racketeering, imprisoned boss Vic Amuso promoted Didone to the position of acting boss. In 2002 and in 2003, Louis Bagel's Didone was indicted on different racketeering charges, and in 2004 was sentenced to life in prison. Interestingly, Bruno Facciolo's niece, Carla, the daughter of his brother Louis, a Gambino family associate, would go on to star in the reality TV series Mob Wives. I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.